thank you for coming. I'm Ken Tellerman. Some of you I know, some of you know me for many years, and some of you don't. But I'm a pediatrician in town here in Baltimore City, and I was asked to give this talk about a project that's kind of near and dear to my heart, and which I've been involved with for about 15 years now. And this is a project, a medical group that's been going down to this little village in Honduras since 1999. So I'm going to give you a little historical perspective and a little bit of background of what we've been doing, the kinds of projects that we've been working on, and then a little bit of time on just sort of my own sort of personal reflections on what this has meant. And feel free to jump in. It's pretty informal. And I'm a little bit of an amateur photographer, so there's a lot of pictures in here. So I'm going to turn off the light.
Can you see Eric? Yeah.
So this project began in 1999 after Hurricane Mitch pretty much devastated most of Honduras. It was sort of comparable to what went on in Haiti a few years ago, and it totally decimated the infrastructure of the country. So at the time, there was an Episcopal church in town here, Church of the Redeemer on Charles Street, that became interested in sort of seeing what kinds of help they could extend down there. And they paired up with their Episcopal colleagues down in the Honduras area and set up this medical brigade. And the first time we went out was in 1999. And I just heard about it through word of mouth. And I'd always wanted to do something like this, so I sort of jumped on board. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the group and what kinds of things we've been doing. So we started back then, and the idea was to go to this little village that they just helped us identify, and it was called Atima. And it was one of the poorer villages in the area. When we first started going down there, it really was in the middle of nowhere. And I used to refer to it as BRIGADE. It was sort of this isolated little village which sort of dropped off all communication. When we went down there, my wife's in the audience, and Donna, and I would just say, we'll reconnect next week, because there was no communication, no phones, there were no cars, no televisions. There really wasn't much going on there, and we pretty much were in this sort of black hole for the week, and really off the communication grid. So Atima. So the United States is up here, and we fly into San Pedro Sula, which is over here. The capital of the country is Tegucigalpa, and we are way out here somewhere. So we fly in usually from Florida, and then there's about a 4 or 5 hour bus ride to get to this. We have to go up this mountain to get to Atima. So it's really sort of in the middle of nowhere. This was a quote that I saw in the High Holiday prayer book last year. And it really resonated with me, because it's really kind of, for me personally, what this trip has sort of been about. And it's like, if you see what needs to be repaired and how to repair it, then you found a piece of the world that God has left for you to complete. And it just really it just felt like, yeah, this is kind of where, it really truly resonated for me. And this is what our work has been about. So, Atima. It's a very poor community of about 8,000 people. But most of the people live in these little cottages. It's a pretty little town, but this is sort of typical of what some of the homes look like. Often there's many families living in the same home, and they may have 1 or 2 rooms in there. There might be a little kitchen in there. Most of them don't have any running water. There's some community waters. There's some river water. Most people don't have water in these homes. It was one of the banana republics, so bananas continue, but in the past that was sort of one of their major industries. So they're really, bananas and coffee are really the 2 major agricultural products that come out of Honduras. And there really isn't much else going on there in terms of sort of business and agriculture, but coffee is a big thing right now. And this is just some pictures of the village. This is the regional Whole Foods. And this is sort of gets a glimpse of what the village looks like. It's mostly little dirt roads, and it's actually pretty little. It's actually kind of lush there. It's semi-tropical. But everybody kind of walks around on foot, and there are animals running around all over the place, and as you go through the streets, you're going to run into pigs and chickens and cows. It is up in the mountains, and it's just a pretty little place. And this is just a typical street scene in Atima. But it is very kind of, rustic. And it's away enough from the larger cities, so people are really still kind of dressed in sort of like, sort of old-fashioned kinds of clothes. People still are in sort of their costumes, and you don't see everybody kind of walking around in jeans like you might see in the capital. So it's really still kind of maintains its sort of old cultural integrity. And this is the people standing outside the clinic, and everybody in the sun has their little parasols. And they're very, Latin American community. So they have their musicians who greet us when we arrive there. Sometimes we get serenaded at 4 o'clock in the morning to get woken up. So, but the medical brigade consisted of about anywhere between 30 to 50 people in a given year. Usually go the third week of June every year, and we collect a multidisciplinary group. So the group has consisted of internal medicine people, pediatricians, obstetrician gynecologists, dentists, podiatry. We have a whole array of nurses from different backgrounds, largely surgical and emergency room nurses, nurse practitioners. And we also have brought along students with us most of the years. Originally they came from the church youth group. A lot of people bring their own kids along, and I'll get to that because our own kids have come a number of summers with me. We have high school students, college students, medical students, and we provide a whole array of services while we're down there. About 6, 7 years ago, we branched off from the Episcopal Church and became our own organization. And it's called OCHO because we wanted to sound Spanish, but it stands for, as you can see, Organization for Community Health Outreach. The reason we did that was because, first of all, the Episcopal Church in Honduras is not a hugely strong influence. It's really a Catholic country. We also found ourselves in this little village embroiled between the politics of the Catholic Church and the Episcopal Church in terms of who we were going to see, and there was all kinds of stuff going on under the surface that we weren't even privy to. We decided it would make more sense for us to sort of branch off and become a nonprofit organization. So that's what we did about 6 years ago. It also allowed us to work with the municipal government there, because they were sort of a little uncomfortable when they thought we were a religious group. And in fact, we never really were a religious group, although we came in under the domain of the Episcopal Church. Most of the participants that were a pretty large multidisciplinary group of people, and our work down there was 100% medical and never had any sort of religious bearings. This is what happens when we get down there. This is the waiting room outside the clinic. So we're busy. So we see about 2,000 people when we're down there. We take over, this is on the right there is the gates to the school. There's an elementary school that we take over for the week. We house there, and we sleep on the floors. The rooms are about this size. We put up tents, and then these become, some of these rooms become the clinic rooms. And what we do is we branch off, we take the tables that are in the room, and we put them into different parts of the room. And we have our pediatricians and our internal medicine people sort of clustered in groups. So often people come in as multi-generations, so we usually have a couple of different specialists in each room, and we see the families together. And but starting around 6:37 a.m., the line starts to form, and it goes down another block or two. And people just kind of come in and are extremely patient. Sometimes they wait several hours before they can get in to see us. Just like people in my office.
I'm sorry. How long is a day?
Well, we start seeing patients around 8:30, 9 o'clock, and we go to about 6. And
are you the only group that does this for this city?
we were initially. And they actually now have brought in, and I'll get to that, we actually have 6 doctors in town now, and we've been involved in helping them build a clinic there. But when we started, we were it. We were the only medical people that were there for the year often. So we just provide a whole array of just primary care services. We sort of become an urgent care center for the week. But we take, everybody that comes in is seen, whether they're healthy or not. People come in for rashes, for coughs, for things that we typically would see in terms of any kind of medical setting. But we also are an urgent care center, so we see machete wounds, burns, just anything that sort of rolls along. We have had a few people who came in and who died while we were there. Sadly, a child that was in cardiac arrest that was being carried for 2 hours by the parent because they didn't have any transportation, and the child was DOA by the time she got to us. Some of our practitioners are very young. We also have an ophthalmology group that comes with us, and they've been doing cataract surgery. So this is one of the doctors that works with us. So that's Mark Honig. I don't mean,
Yeah.
you know Mark? You know Mark? Okay. So Mark's been coming with us for a couple of years now, and he does these repairs are done in these classrooms, which are much more rustic looking than this very nice classroom. And one of the nurse's responsibilities that's assisting him is to chase chickens out of the room. So that's the kind of conditions that he's operating in. And it's pretty amazing. Yes, he brings the equipment with him on the plane.
Wow.
So this is what they're doing, and it's restorative, it's life-giving restoration for people with cataracts. And he does the surgery at the beginning of the week, and sort of sees them back a few days later. And in subsequent years, they might do the other eye. But it just is amazing in terms of, this particular kind of procedures coming into these villages where these people would never have this procedures done. So this is one of our rheumatologists who's injecting steroids into a knee. And this is our ER doc from GBMC. And again, we see people with all kinds of wounds, fractures. We don't have any kind of Hi.
Excuse us, thank you so much.
We don't have any lab backup or anything like that, so we're sort of do what we can. We bring all the equipment down with us. We actually ship it down, and we're going to be going down at the end of June this year. Our shipment just left about a week or so ago, and we'll arrive there hopefully by the time we get there. It's always a little bit of hair-raising to make sure that it gets there in time. But all the equipment, all the medications that we use are brought down there. We purchase them through our organization, and whatever we don't use, we leave with the people down there, the clinics, so that they have it for the rest of the year. One of the things that our group became involved with was building a new clinic. So they have a little clinic that's has maybe 2 rooms in it, and they had 1 or 2 doctors over the years who were hired by the government to see patients there. When we started, there was no clinic there, and then it evolved into a 1 or 2 doctor operation. Now they have 6 full-time physicians there, and we are helping them build this new clinic, which hopefully will be done in the next few months. And this will become a 24/7 urgent care center. And they'll be able to stabilize patients. They don't have any hospitals around. The nearest hospital is several hours away, but they can stabilize people there. They could ostensibly do some deliveries there, although they have no obstetricians in the town, and they would be able to deal with emergencies that occur at all hours. So it's a pretty, again, they're really in the middle of nowhere, and most people would not venture out on the roads at night. One, because they are chillingly scary, because you have to go down this mountain with all these switchbacks. There's no lights, and all the banditos hang out at night, so it is kind of dangerous actually to travel around there, if you don't have any security with you. This is one of our young friends from down there, who I'll tell you more about in a little bit. But one of the things that was really interesting, that was an unexpected outcome of our work down there, was that we were bringing our teenagers from here, from our high school students, and a group of the young kids in town who were about the same age came up to us one year and said, "Oh, can we help out here too?" You know, and we said, "Amazing, yes, of course." So this is one of the kids that's been working with us for years. She probably was about 15 when we took this picture, but you know, it was she's walking around with a stethoscope. I mean, they really kind of got into it, but what they did is help us out in the pharmacy, help with crowd control, help translate with us, and work very intimately with us, and started becoming our partners over the years to come. And many of these kids continue to work with us every year when we come down there. Plus, they intimately know the community, so they're amazingly helpful people to have in terms of getting a history. They know who these people are, and they also know some of the resources, so they can really help us get people tied into whatever services they need. So that was a real plus, and it was kind of a fun thing because we've developed relationships with a bunch of these kids over the years. One of the people that came on in our group had this a wonderful idea about developing indoor stoves. And the stoves that they had for cooking were really polluting the environment. There were a lot of people with asthma. They weren't very efficient, and they were burning off a lot of the wood in the region. And he came up with a very highly efficient wood-burning stove that he designed himself, and it's vented through the roof. Before, they weren't vented through the roof, so smoke filled the entire cottage, and it uses much less wood, but burns at a much more efficient rate, has less CO2 production. I don't know if anybody was in the talk next door on global climate change, but it looked kind of scary, but it reduced, and he was able to obtain carbon credits on the international market for his business that he started down there. This is a guy who's an entrepreneur who basically started a Honduran business, and they've now installed about 65,000 of these stoves, and they're all done for free, and the carbon credits allow them to sort of repurchase the materials, and the business just sustains itself. And some of them are a little fancy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But they're very lovely. People love them, and it's a big deal. The other thing is that there's virtually very little school supplies. Paper is in demand. If you leave a piece of paper on a table and walk away, it's going to be gone 2 minutes later. Pens, all these things that we never would even think about are in high demand in this area. So we started bringing down school supplies. One of the pediatricians in our group was organizing that for a number of years, and we would bring trunks and trunks of these things down, and we would go out to the outlying communities and distribute them to the schools in the region. And the kids like it. But this is the project that's sort of been near and dear to my heart. The person that developed the stoves is a businessman, and he was had no public health background, but he was the first person in our group to recognize, besides Donna, who said, you really need to do something that has more of a footprint down there if you're going to keep on going back. We would see thousands of patients each week, and we were doing Band-Aid stuff and seeing people. And in some cases, there were patients who had some chronic illnesses that we were able to get tied back into their system. We saw children with brain tumors. We've seen kids with congenital cardiac anomalies, and other people who had more significant chronic illness that we were able to tie back into their system there, or assist them in terms of getting to the medical facilities in Tegucigalpa, which is where they have a medical center, a university medical center, and provide them with some funds to get whatever needed to be taken care of. But we really wanted to do something that was more sustainable, and it became clear that this was the way to go. So this is where the water comes from. It's a river, and the village is sort of at the base of this river, and the water flows into the village through some piping. But what became clear was that that's what they were drinking, and the water on the right was what they were drinking. Because they had nothing, nothing got chlorinated, nothing got cleaned up. If it rained a lot, the sediment got stirred, and this is what the water looks like that people were drinking. As you can imagine, a lot of the people are quite sick because they have diarrheal illness, and the kids particularly. People are sustained on this, but obviously this is not what most people would we want to be drinking. So we started a number of years ago looking at what we could do to sort of develop the health system there. And one of the things that we did, and this was a project that actually we advertised through the Jewish Times, and it was collecting these plastic bottles, which were designed by the kids, and basically it's through the CDC had come up with, they're called tippy taps, and they get hung outside the door with some soap attached. So we were trying to get people to start to clean hands as a way of reducing illness down there. So simply washing your hands goes a long, long way. People are coming in after dealing with animals in the street and then serving kids food. So we're really trying to instill in the population the idea that it's really important to have not only clean water but clean hands. So we worked with them on that. But this was the first iteration of our water treatment. We brought down these massive number of buckets with water filters that we purchased. And we set up this kind of primitive water treatment facility, filtration system. And basically, people would pour water into the top bucket, and it would go through those filters that you could see in these buckets. And it not only it killed bacteria and a number of viruses and parasites, and also reduced the sediment in the water, so that if they left it in there for a few hours, they could get relatively clean water. And when we tested that water, it was pretty much bacterial free. And we started handing these out to the community. And this is where the government down there, the local government, was really interested, and they worked hand in hand with us to identify the communities around there that were in the most dire need, and provided us with the trucks and the manpower to get these out there. And they had people from the community instructing people on how to use these. So that was our first big sort of collegial effort to really kind of work on reducing the community health issues. And we would go to the villages, we would hand these out, and then people would bring them back home. And then we also continue to have a really beefed up Clean Hands campaign, and particularly for the children. So this is Dora the Explorer, who apparently is big down there. And we actually, my sister-in-law, who's somewhat of an artist, helped develop these little coloring books that we handed out to the kids, but it also gives a message about the importance of clean hands and washing hands and before eating, etc. And then when we were down there, we had a whole festival that involved emphasizing clean hands and washing hands, and set up these basins around the community to really kind of beef up the interest in doing this. But more importantly, while we were doing this, we started to work with the Rotary Club of Baltimore, and they were helping us generate some of the funds for the water filtration systems. Those little filters cost about $20 each. So we wanted to give out hundreds of those, so we had to raise some funds. So I started going to some Rotary meetings around town just to sort of talk about what we were doing. And at one of the meetings, I was approached by somebody from Rotary International, and she said, how much are you trying to raise? And I said, $5,000 to $10,000. And she said, well, would you mind if we could get you $100,000? And I said, no, not at all. So she said, well, let's work together and we'll see if we can raise some money. And I said, if we can raise $100,000, we can build a treatment plant. And that's what we worked on. And this is what we raised $100,000 working closely with Rotary International. And we had to work with some other organizations down there. There was an organization called Agua para Pueblo, which is water for the people, and another group called Agua Clara, which actually came out of Cornell. And they had developed the engineering to start constructing these, and had done a bunch of these around Honduras. And what's wonderful about these plants that we helped fund is that they do not run on electricity, which frequently goes out there. So they're not dependent on electricity. It's all gravity dependent, and they work quite efficiently to clean up the water. And I'll show you a little bit of what these things look like. So this thing is like the size of a house. So it's huge. And this is the inside of it, and the water kind of comes from the river on one end, goes through a whole series of processing through there, and there's all this filtration that you can see. It removes the sediment, and then it's chlorinated on the other end before it goes into the village. So this is what's there now, and the government kicked in a bunch of money to be part of this, and Rotary Club insisted that they would have to contribute something towards this, which makes a lot of sense in terms of buy-in for them. But the people that we were dealing with were pretty smart, and the mayor down there really recognized this is important for his village and for his election, and it was a good thing to do. So he really worked very hard to promote this, make this work. They found the materials to kind of put this together. We kind of provided them with some of the cash revenue to get it going. They hired the people to keep it going. Actually, there's a little room in the back there where someone can stay overnight, and it's manned 24/7. One of the engineering students from Cornell actually was able to put the data for this online, so we can track it from here to see how they're doing. But they can change the composition of the water when there's more heavy sediment. They put some more chemicals into the water that basically precipitate the sediment out. They can check the chlorine levels all the time to sort of gauge whether they need to go up or down. So it's quite amazing. This is what the water looks like when it comes in. This is what it looks like coming out.
Wow.
So that was huge. We did a little bit of a public health investigation down there pre and post, and found that indeed, as would have been expected, that the amount of diarrheal illness, was reduced by clean water. Not that anybody was so shocked by that, but the other thing that
Can I have a question? So when the water comes out of the plant, does it go to a central location, or does it go to people's houses, or how do
it
people
goes through
get
some major conduits that go into the village, and then it goes to some of it goes to some people's homes now, and some of it goes to these large basins that are sort of set up around the community. They're sort of community water cisterns where people can share water, and they can go in there and take water back to their homes. And some have water in their homes now, but most of them just tap into the cisterns. And I can tell you the cistern at the school that we used looked a lot cleaner after this thing was built, because you couldn't see the bottom of the water before, but now it's really clear. This is a little school that we became involved with in the village there. A couple of years ago, that we were seeing some kids who were rolling through who appeared to have various congenital deformities and birth defects, etc. And one of the teachers from the school came up to us and said, would you like to see what we've done for some of these kids? Because these kids don't have any educational services down there. It's not mandated. So these kids were all at home, but a couple of teachers in the elementary school were volunteering their time after the end of the school day for a couple of additional hours to sort of just work with these kids, even though none of them had any formal training in working with disabled kids. So they took us to this little classroom that, again, was about the size of this room, and there were these parents and a whole array of kids there with the whole gamut of different kinds of developmental disabilities. So we see kids in there with hydrocephalus, which you don't see here anymore, and kids with visual impairments, hearing impairments, Down syndrome, cleft palates, and spina bifida, and they were just basically providing some support for these families who had these kids in their homes all day long, and at the end of the day they could just bring the kids over, the parents could just sort of sit and socialize a little bit, and they just got a little respite care from the kids. And they tried to do a little bit of sort of teaching with the kids, but the kids had such an array of different problems and different intellectual levels that it was difficult. So we invited some occupational therapists from Kennedy to come down with us. and they were very enthusiastic about joining us. And they started coming a couple of years ago, and they started training the teachers down there on how to work with these kids. And this is one of our occupational therapists from Kennedy who's been coming with us. She's actually the head of the department at Kennedy Krieger. And this is a child that she was teaching to write his name. This is the first time this kid ever had written his name before. So the teachers really were very happy to get our support and help, and these people have been coming for several years. So they found an architect to design a new school that they want to build down there. This is the blueprints for the school that they were hoping to have one day in the village. That our next project is to be working with the Rotary Club to see if we can raise money to build the school. One of the things that we observed down there was a lot of the kids that we thought who had birth defects actually were the products of anoxia and brain damage. So we identified who was doing the deliveries in the village, and it was these 200-year-old midwives who had been doing this like forever and had no formal training in terms of what to do with a baby or how to resuscitate. So we brought a neonatal nurse with us last year who taught the midwives how to resuscitate babies, so when they go out at odd hours at night, if the child's not breathing, they could do some basic CPR to see if we could reduce the amount of congenital, hypoxia or brain damage at the time of delivery in deliveries that weren't going smoothly. My kids have been coming down with me for a number of years over the years. This is my oldest daughter, Shauna, and she came a number of times. And both of my kids sort of dealt with this in different ways and really incorporated this experience. Both of our kids are artists, and Shauna was really moved to to paint some of the people down there, and actually held a number of art shows in the community after we were down there, and sold all her paintings and used the money to go back to our organization. And that's Rachel, my youngest daughter, who also came a number of times and helped us with the water project. But this is an example of how this affected her. This was a piece from her college application essay. And I'll just, she was just becoming increasingly clear to me that community service, helping others, is not simply about charity, but about justice. Our team of medical professionals and students are not simply being charitable, but are trying to spread justice, repair inequities, and to help people access opportunities that poverty has taken away. And that's kind of what she took out of this, which is fairly profound, I think. These are some of my friends down there that I have developed relationships with over the years who helped us translate, work with the clinic. That's the young woman with the stethoscope on the left, a number of years later. So and now that they have cell phones and Facebook, we get frequent contact. So Donna often gets calls at home. Donna doesn't speak any Spanish, and she can just say, Dr. Ken no está aquí, he's not here.
No habla español.
But Dahlia now speaks fluent English as a result of our involvement with her. So she now calls us all the time and only wants to speak English. And sometimes connections last for a lifetime. That's Adalia and Shauna. When we first went down there in early 1990, in early 2000. And that's them a number of years later, and yet we were invited to Dahlia's wedding. And as sometimes when you touch someone's life, they in turn touch yours. And I was invited to Dahlia's wedding, and her father died many years ago, and I was asked to escort her down the aisle. So this is kind of sort of like
other family.
It's my other family. So Donna's never met.
I've never met them.
I don't have any offspring down there. So these are just the kids down there. So it's just the beautiful kids. And these are just candid, I mean, I would just go up to these kids, and nobody has ADHD down there, by the way. I don't know. So you can stand there, and the kids just sit there and they look at you, and you could spend 15 minutes taking a picture of somebody. They don't move. So I get some amazing pictures of the kids, and they are really cute. And this is just from walking around the village and just kind of taking pictures of people. And that's one of my little, it's not my offspring. So what's a nice Jewish boy doing in a place like this? So, you know, it goes back to the quote at the beginning. You know, sometimes you just sort of get called to do something, and for me, this was it. You know, once I sort of found out about this, I felt like this is, you know, I jumped in 100%, and you just are, you know, you just get pulled in. This is the Episcopal priest. This is Padre Mendoza, who is our main contact down there, who became sort of a friend of ours. In fact, came to Baltimore a couple of years ago and stayed at our house and asked to come to shul with us. So he, you know, so we sort of became emissaries, because I don't think most of the people in the village even have any idea what a Jew is. So there wasn't any anti-Semitism down there. His wife actually came from El Salvador, and she has Jewish family roots, but she's now Episcopal. But he was very interested in what we were doing, you know, and also interested in, and there were actually a number of us who came on the trip who were Jewish, so he was really interested in sort of making these connections with us. One summer I was down there, and then people were walking around with Jewish stars. And I thought, well, that's really weird. And I saw these, because we're really in the middle of nowhere. And some of them just told me that they were decorations. They had no idea what they were. But some of them said, oh yes, there was a Jewish community here at one point. There used to be a synagogue not far from here. And I was really kind of surprised. And I said, you know, well, what happened to, where did they all go? And like all good Jewish people, they all moved to Florida. So that's where they went. We attended some of the church services down there, and I was sitting there with my daughter one day, and they were singing this song at church, and I was thinking, I kind of elbowed her, and I said, that sounds really familiar. And this is what the song is. It goes, La paz está con nosotros, la paz está. And it means, you know, peace is with us, always there will be peace. And I was like, who would have thought? So I have no idea where that came from, but you know, there it is. So you know, it's always interesting what you find when you sort of go around the world. So this is the sign that was at the opening of the water treatment facility, and it says basically, "Solo una cosa vuelve," means only one thing can turn make a dream or turn a dream impossible, and it says el miedo a fracasar, which is the fear of failure. So, thank you for coming.
I'm convinced.